Welcome to our show. I am Rosemary Laureano, and you're watching Connect Me Too. Today, we'll be talking about safety in our schools after Sandy Hook's tragedy. Before we go further, let's remember what happened that fatidic day, December 14th, 2012, when 20-year-old Adam Lanza fatally shot 20 children and 6 adult staff members at Sandy Hook Elementary School. Let's take a look.
This is an ABC News special report.
Good afternoon to all of you. I'm Diane Sawyer here at ABC News headquarters in New York, and we do have the breaking news of a shooting at an elementary school in Newtown, Connecticut. And you heard that right. It is unthinkable. An elementary school 45 miles southwest of Hartford. We know at least 3 victims are in the hospital at this hour in very serious condition. We know there was at least 1 gunman now confirmed dead. The school is still on lockdown. SWAT teams have been on the scene. We have seen the images of the terrified children being whisked out of the school, led by their teachers, and taken to a fire station nearby. And just moments ago, I spoke to the mother of a 7-year-old boy. In that fire station, there were 2 kinds of parents: those who received the joyful news of relief and those who are still in doubt about their children. She got the good news that her 7-year-old son was all right. Here's what she had to say. Did they give you any sense when you got there, when you got to the fire department area, what had happened? What did they tell you?
No, nobody is giving us, no officials are giving us any information. There's a parent I know who happened to be in the building at the time, and she's pretty broken up. She was in a meeting with the principal and some other people, and they heard shooting. They got up, they went out, and she had stayed in the conference room, and my understanding from her is the principal and other people got shot when they went out into the hallway, and she was the one who called 911.
So you talked to the person who called 911?
Yes, and she said that there was hundreds of shots, it sounded like.
Hundreds of shots?
That's what she said.
And were there families there who don't know where their children are?
Yes, there are still families here who do not know where their children are.
And were they giving them any information at all? Are there still
There's
children?
no information for those parents. They have the kids who were evacuated into the fire department house. They asked, as they've been taking attendance, they've been checking kids out to their parents. So some parents have secured their children and left with them, but there are still parents here who do not have their children and have no idea, and they're not being told anything.
What was your...
To better understand these events and to talk about the safety in our schools, we'll talk with Gettysburg School District, Dr. Larry Redding. Also, we'll be talking with Executive Director Jody Walker from Kids Inc. Incorporated.
Children's Advocacy Center.
Thank you. Welcome you all.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Redding, after this incident happened, what can you tell us? What safety plans have been implemented in our schools?
Well, and I'll speak specifically about Gettysburg School District, but I do know that all schools have similar plans that I'm going to speak about. It starts with what we've been doing over the past number of years to regulate who comes into a school building and to have procedures for a single point of entry and doors being locked during the day, and those types of procedures where every visitor coming into the building has to go through either a buzz-in procedure or a swipe card that access is limited to. In this particular situation, that was, there was an individual who wanted to break those safety barriers and did so, obviously, with high-powered weapons, and that's something that you can't limit that person if they want to get into your building. So then you step inside and look at what other procedures are in place when there's an intruder, and we do practice intruder drills so that just like a fire drill, so that students know if there's an alarm sound or a message over the public address system that they go into a certain mode of operation. And my understanding that certainly that intruder type of drill was used in this situation. In our schools, we've been working very closely with our police departments. We have multiple police agencies that cover our district, and trying to understand what process is the best process to use as it relates to an intruder drill, and where do you put children to protect them in case of someone that's unwanted, who's broken the security barriers and the security process, and now is in a building wanting to do harm.
Well, in this particular situation, Adam Lanza was the son of one of the teachers, right?
There was some connection.
Some connection. Okay, so we're saying that safety is for everybody and everybody has to follow the rules.
Absolutely, and that's been a transition that again, schools have been working on to make sure that even the folks, the staff members or the parents who make regular visits to a building still go through those procedures, so that we're not just either a familiar face, and you alluded to that as a possibility, that here's someone who was familiar with the building and didn't have immediate access, that they had to go through a safety screening to get into the building. And our district, we have cameras at all of our main entrances, and our staff are making sure that that person has a legitimate reason to come into the building, and at least making it more difficult for that to occur. This type of situation, you can't prevent every incident where somebody wants to gain access, but you do put those processes and procedures in place to minimize those occurrences.
Dr. Redding, can you tell us if the district has the funds to improve the security in our schools?
Well, from the standpoint of funding, certainly security issues have a priority. There are programs that I've begun to see in my professional journals where local police, state level organizations, at the federal level, there are more funds becoming available for school safety initiatives, increasing the number of cameras, training staff to deal with situations, creating better relationships with local police forces, and having access to resource officers. So there are funding sources that are becoming more available because of this tragedy to help schools deal with those types of situations.
Are our schools safe?
I would say they're probably the most safe place children can be on a daily basis. You can go to a movie theater and have somebody out of control. You can go to a church. So there isn't a place where there's a 100% guarantee, but I feel schools are the safest place to have for children.
Can our schools be safer?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's certainly what our initiatives have been over the last several months, to take a look at our entrances and our procedures. I've had several meetings with local police departments to talk about things that we can do to again, build that relationship where they feel comfortable coming into our buildings. They know the buildings, so that it's not a tragedy the first time they step in and have to find out, well, where is the gymnasium, where is the cafeteria, and those types of procedures. Again, that's the police departments, that's their job. They need to, if resources need to be allocated to increase the number of officers in a community or to provide training for them, certainly that would be a benefit to the school.
Okay. How can we make them safer?
Well, number one is to expect each school building to have those safety measures and to ask questions as a parent, as a grandparent, as a visitor to a school building to reinforce that you want to go through those processes and not look at it as, okay, here I have to sign in again, I've got to get my clearances again, and to support the fact that those procedures are for the benefit of the students, and to show your support rather than arguing with a school secretary about having to go through through those security measures.
Can you tell us if the school has any booklets of information for parents and family members?
I do know through our building newsletters, there's been an increased focus on providing information to parents and grandparents in those buildings about the procedures, to sharing more information on what is being done. Obviously, there are some things behind the scenes that we're doing that we really don't want to publicize because, you know, if someone knows the plan, they're going to obviously work harder to find the kinks in that. So there are some security measures that, you know, where security cameras are placed and how those pieces are handled. Obviously, we don't want to go through that, but again, comfort with how drills are handled. This situation, the mother being frantic about wanting to connect with their children immediately after the incident, and understanding that there needs to be time so that we can account for all of the staff members who signed into a building. School buildings have visitors coming and going all the time, and you know, making sure that you know who was in that building, and that takes time, and certainly understanding the anxiety of, was my child involved, but also understanding the need to go through a thorough process of identifying who was there and whether they truly are missing.
What parents could do to help?
Again, understanding, having those conversations with their children about following the rules. Cell phones, for example, are prevalent even in our elementary schools, and not sending a mixed message to their children of follow the rules of the person in charge, the teacher or the principal, and taking being confident that those procedures are going to ultimately connect them with their children at the appropriate time. But parents can be very supportive of that safety message and letting those folks, whether it's law enforcement or school personnel, handle the situations and recognize that they have the best interest of the children in mind and understand the anxiety that parents would have.
Okay. After the tragedy in Connecticut happens, a Colombian by the name of Miguel Caballero started a business creating armored clothing for children designed for children ages 8 to 16 years of age, and with a weight of 2 to 4 pounds and with a cost of $150 to $600. Do you think this is really necessary?
No, no. First of all, as I mentioned, an incident can occur any time of the day, at any location. And the only way that something like that would be effective would be if the child got up in the morning, put it on before they got out of bed, and kept it on until they got back in their bed at night. And that's not the best approach to school safety and sending that message of always being fearful of your life. Rather, spending the money to train people to recognize adults or children who may want to cause harm, to provide those resources, to have counseling services or community services available. Those are the places I would see funds like, especially at that level, being most effective. Getting their children involved with groups to understand reading that somebody's having a bad day and having those conversations, and the whole mental health side, because it's not about that one person that's going to come in. It may be a parent that's angry. It may be another child who has been bullied. So there's lots of other situations that need to be addressed other than the gun violence.
Dr. Redding, there is a plan developed, and if so, how long will it take to be implemented?
Well, the plan is an ongoing plan, and the implementation has been ongoing. It's, as I mentioned, new procedures, new implementation that you constantly go back to a plan. And you go through those plans with your staff and your students so that you practice. As a good example is the fire drill. You want students to understand the process involved when the incident occurs, and a plan is just that, preparing folks for a situation you hope you never have to use, but you've gone through that, and there's a comfort level of this is the expectation.
Okay, I have two questions from a parent. She's saying here she has a concern on when a child is dismissed early from school, the person picking up the child, how are they identified?
Again, that's one of those critical points for parents to be involved with the school, that they have provided accurate information to the school as to who is authorized to pick up students at the end of the day or any time. And that information needs to be constantly updated. If there's someone that's different, that's not on that list of guardians or people who have the authority to take children home, that information needs to be called into the district. And again, the expectation that we wouldn't release the child unless we knew that that person had approval to it. And we get into situations where there's a last-minute change and the district gets put in the place of having to say no, we're not going to permit that child to be dismissed to someone that hasn't been approved prior.
Okay, she has another question. Is there proper security and cameras on school grounds?
Yes, and certainly that's one of the areas that I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but we've looked at areas that have video coverage, and how is that coverage monitored, and how long is it kept for review of who has been in different parts of the building. As more funds become available, the technology has expanded to the point where those video feeds could be accessible to the local police officers to help monitor who's coming and going, or if there was a 911 call, to be able to flip on a video camera of one of our buildings and to have some direct live footage. So that's certainly a piece of technology as funds become available that may be a more comforting position for families to be in.
Okay, let's move to Ms. Walker. Question, why the attacker chooses a school?
If we knew the answer to that, I think all our schools would be a lot safer, wouldn't they?
Yes.
You know, those who do these horrific acts of violence, whether it be on children or adults, such as the movie theater that you referenced, those individuals obviously have mental illness. The illness looks different for those different individuals, but typically when we start to dissect the stories of the shooters, we start to hear that at least warning signs within families, if not within mental health systems, that we can do better at either identifying as systems or as pouring more resource or funding into the mental health system to help identify that.
Okay. What is in the attacker's mind?
Again, if I knew the answer to that,
Why do you think they do that? What they do?
you know, the different reasons why folks hurt other folks varies from individual and scenario to scenario. Why this young man targeted a school, it's my understanding that his mother worked there. It's my understanding that he did have some psychological issues. Why he targeted both adults and the children that his mother worked with, I honestly don't know.
The attacker usually plans ahead, and if so, how is that no one noticed it or reported?
I agree. Absolutely. I referenced just a second ago that there are warning signs, you know, in terms of an individual who is collecting materials, whether it be for bombs, guns, threats. There's indicators along the way, and the question needs to be answered: why don't folks pay attention to that? Is it fear? Is it lack of understanding? All of the above that we need to, as a society, start to look at looking and learning from these case examples so that we can do better for child safety.
And what happens after a tragedy happens?
What happens after a tragedy happens? You know, that's why I think we're here today, is to talk about lessons that we can learn from all these tragedies. Because it's the adult's responsibility to learn from these situations so that when it does happen in our community, that we can do the very best possible for our children. Everything from the everything starting with the initial safety at a school premises, to the law enforcement reaction when there is an incident, to the mental health supports and services that will need to happen both for children, faculty, and families, and the community at large. Everyone is affected by these tragedies, so it's not something you can pull together when the incident is unfolding. We need to get together prior to and have very comprehensive plans and partnerships.
Have you seen any changes after this tragedy happened?
In terms of the work that I do in the Children's Advocacy Center, we respond to allegations of child abuse and provide specific services to those. So, have I seen specific changes? No, not in the agency that I service. However, the children that we provide services to who've experienced trauma from child abuse are triggered, we use the word triggered, by these horrific acts that they see unfolding on the TV. You know, it's trauma compounded with trauma in the world that they live in, and that sense of not feeling safe. So we see it in the clients that we serve, that increased vulnerability, that increased sense of unsafety. That's what I've witnessed.
Do you have any other information that you want to share with us?
I think I'd like to just talk about the importance of systems getting together, such as the schools, the police, the mental health services within a community, and developing that plan. We have an amazing system here in Adams County where we talk and are agreeable to sitting down and sharing that information. Because part of responding to a traumatic event is, the first part is the awareness piece, how we need to have a plan. I think that in our county, we all get that. We don't need to be taught that. The next is the development of that plan that extends beyond the walls of the school. And then, you know, if, God forbid, it happens in our own community here, what that looks like in terms of those supports, both the day of and ongoing.
Are we ready? Something like that happened here?
You're never ready. You're never ready. Do we have the resources to provide those supports? Absolutely. We have it here in this community. We're very blessed that we have a lot of amazing experts to do that. But are we ever ready? Not for Sandy Hook.
Every incident is different. And you can't be ready for every scenario, but the fact that you have brought agencies together, and I would agree, Adams County on a monthly basis has that organization of leaders that get together and just being understanding of what's happening at each of those agencies and what resources. Again, so when that tragedy occurs, you're more comfortable with whose resources would be pulled if you needed follow-up services or on-the-spot services, and go through drills and scenarios and step back and say, okay, if this had happened, who would be the lead agency, and where would you move children when you wanted to take them out of this situation? So it's, but every scenario is different.
There's some other questions for you, Ms. Walker. Questions from the community. Are there any resources for adolescents with mental health disorders within the community?
Absolutely. We have a great network of mental health services in our community that if any parent or individual wants connected with that, I'd be happy to assist people in connecting with those resources.
Do you have any phone number that they could call?
Well, you know, it depends upon what their needs are, whether it's what the mental health issue is, whether it's substance abuse, whether it's a collection of co-occurring disorders. That's where people need to be put in touch with. There's not just one place. And I think it's important to help folks identify with the accurate resource first so that they don't get frustrated and feel like they're getting that runaround or that there aren't needs out there that can help them. So it's really an individualized assessment and phone call to connect folks.
Are there any local resources to assist with post-traumatic stress disorder, including adult children and adolescents?
Yes, absolutely. You know, PTSD is the short form for post-traumatic stress disorder for the community who's watching. And post-traumatic stress disorder, one can acquire not only through such a horrific act such as the Sandy Hook tragedy, but one can exhibit post-traumatic stress disorder from examples of bullying in terms of the extent and trauma that they've experienced through bullying, through child abuse, through exposure to domestic violence. So we already in this community are seeing children, unfortunately, that are being exposed to really high-level trauma. So we do have resources in our community to help kids heal.
Okay, another question. What specific things can parents do to support the efforts of schools?
You know, Dr. Redding talked about the importance of parents getting on board with the protocols, understanding what the school's procedures and protocols are, and then have that ongoing support. You know, I was sitting here reflecting upon what you were saying in terms of that. 10 years ago when 9/11 occurred, I had both the privilege and the heartache of responding as a mental health provider 4 days after the attack. And then in different areas after in the next 2 years. And we all thought at the time this is something that the country would never forget, and of course we haven't forgotten. However, I fly quite a bit, and I continue to hear folks going through security mad about the security at the airport. And it's those little nuances that people forget why they were there, and bringing it back to the parents, that frustration of 5 years from now, I have to sign in at the front desk again? I'd hate for us to forget why that procedure was originally put in place.
Okay, well, any remarks before we close?
Thank you for the opportunity. Certainly, you know, the job of school safety is a community job, and there are expectations for what I can do as a school leader, but that's only a piece of it. I would encourage, and we've worked to build those relationships with the other community agencies, the police department, the mental health services, and unfortunately it takes an incident to get you to dedicate the time to go back and review those plans and to make sure you know who that person is. Has there been a change in staff that now has taken over an agency, or they have different resources, in some cases less resources than they had maybe when you sat down initially. So you know, it's important that all of those pieces, and at the top of the list is the individual family and the parent, helping to reassure, number one, that schools are safe, that they can help by following procedures to reassure their children that if they see something that they're uncomfortable with, to report to authorities, and just to keep that dialogue open.
Thank you. Anything else, Ms. Walker?
I think, what the community also wants to hear and should know is that children can heal. We're thinking about the children that survived this and have lost so many of their little friends, to know that with the right mental health supports put in place, that children can heal. They will be forever changed, but as adults, we can help kids heal.
Well, I really thank you for your time to be here, and I thank you everyone for watching.